Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to Somos, Hispanos. I am your host, Cristiana Malacara. In this episode, we will dive deep into the long-time stigma surrounding mental health stability, specific in the Latino population. We will sit down with experts in the field from the Great Lakes Bay region and ask why, what do we do, and how do we break the generational pattern of not seeking assistance. Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and talk to us about something that doesn't get talked about a lot. And that would be the mental health and stability in the Latino population. So we're gonna narrow that down even further to the Latino population in the Great Lakes Bay region. But before we get there, could we go around and just introduce ourselves and our titles?
Absolutely. My name is Dr. Melvin McDowell, and I am the owner and clinical director at McDowell Healing Arts Center.
Good afternoon. My name is Angel Gomez. I am a clinical therapist at McDowell Healing Arts Center, and I am the youth group director at St. Joseph Parish in Saginaw.
Hi, I'm Jackie Torres, and I'm a clinical therapist and social media coordinator at McDowell Healing Arts Center.
So can we talk a little bit about McDowell Healing? What services do you provide there in your facility?
Yeah, so it's mostly your standard talk therapy. So folks can come to our office and receive mental health counseling and therapy. We provide it to young adults, kids, groups, couples, you name it. We also have other things we consider to be like our healing arts and things like that. So we might have paint nights or things of that nature.
What's the definition of therapy?
I would define therapy as a process where a professional and someone such as you and I or someone from our community would sit down and have a conversation and begin to process things that are going on within their lives. And
so when we're talking about therapy within the Latino population, there's always been a type of kind of umbrella stigma that we don't talk about it, it gets kind of hushed and put away, and it goes into this little box inside of each of us. And then from there, we just carry that little box around throughout life. I personally, growing up as a Mexican-American woman, have experienced this. Where do you see this changing in the future through the services that you provide?
So one of the things I would say is that it's about our community coming in and becoming that professional as well. There's at least two of us that speak Spanish at McDowell Healing Arts Center. There's two of us that we feel a very strong need to be into the community. So we attend events that happen in our community, like our Cinco de Mayo event in Saginaw and the Que Onda event that's in Saginaw.
So you mentioned that you have Spanish-speaking therapists there. Why is that important?
So that's one of the biggest barriers that Latino can face. Therapy is kind of shunned upon about our older generations, and for them to understand, we need to be able to provide some education as well as having family support. And one of those things is being able to show and represent the Latino culture, the Spanish speaker that has started going through these changes in their generational trauma.
Jackie, when we're looking at the stigma, what are some of those barriers that you see that are being removed?
So growing up Mexican American as well, it is, like we mentioned, mental health is, stigmatized because they were like, well, you should use your spirituality as a form of coping. So you're not praying enough, you're not, asking for forgiveness, or you're not looking for family reassurance and looking for those coping skills instead of finding that professional help. So like he mentioned, going out to the community and especially Hispanic events and letting them know, like, hey, it's okay to come and talk to somebody outside of your comfort and just being able to allow them to represent themselves and using their Spanglish like we do in our office. That way they feel like it's not usually just a professional rapport, instead of it's a more of a building experience with one another. So when it comes to the Hispanic community, you want to share those experiences, even if it's a personal experience yourself, because it's going to allow them to feel like, okay, I'm not alone. I am able to put my trust and faith in you that whatever we say in our office is a safe environment.
What are some of the topics that are coming to you as the Latinos are coming in and seeking help? And then also, what is that primary age range?
So I would say the age range, it varies. I have seen young children come in, as well as older folks that would be coming in. I work with a lot of Hispanic boys, because what they're going against is the machismo, the being the man, the traditional gender role, and they have to go against that and actually be a functioning member of society that is going to allow his wife to go work, or allow his wife to go out and go to the movies, or even stay home and take care of their children where their wife is providing for them.
Do you ever see that?
I have more Hispanic women on my caseload, so I thought that was a really cool experience because they're allowed to express their individual experiences as single mothers in the household, so needing to find the financial stability while also maintaining the household is a huge, difficult issue amongst their livelihood. So working with that, we work with a lot of self-esteem and self-love concepts. So finding ways that are going to allow them to be like, yeah, I have 2 or 3 jobs right now, but I'm also maintaining my household. It's a lot to work with, but my family is proud of my accomplishments. I'm proud of my accomplishments. If they are needing resources, we usually talk to Angel here, and he gives them the resources that they need in the community if they do lack certain things. And just allowing them to be able to speak like English and Spanish in the room, I don't have to correct them. They are able to just be their individual, unique selves and be able to have that Spanglish in my office. And if I say, there's different forms of Spanish, so there's Spain Spanish, and then there's Mexican Spanish, and then there's little quirky lingo that we use in our households, right? So if they use a word that I'm like, doesn't sound like familiar in my household, I'm like, okay, can you express what this actually means? And I'm like, okay, cool, that's what I thought you meant, and we can expand off that. And being able to learn off one another in a way gives them a sense of taking back and individuality, so they feel like they're in a safe environment and being able to share some experiences that they truly struggle with.
So being the owner of the facility, how important was it for you to expand into this population and hire these 2 wonderful people to kind of take over that portion of the community in this way?
Yeah, it was extremely important, and I guess first let's start off with, they both were my students, and so I got the amazing opportunity to work with them in different capacities. But having them to come onto our team, it was extremely important because I understand how much representation matters. As African American male myself, when I was searching for a therapist for myself, I was looking for an African American male. But again, we are like unicorns. People say, often talked about, you're rarely seen or something like that. But I know that I experienced that as a black male, and I know that other minority groups might experience that as well.
So you mentioned mirroring the community. Did you see the need before the hire?
Yes, absolutely. So we would get folks that would come in and they're looking for services, and they might specifically say, or ask, do you have a Hispanic, therapist? And there were times where we didn't, So yes, there was definitely a need. Hispanic moms, Hispanic dads would call in, or we might get referrals from schools, and they'll have young folks who would be specifically looking for a Hispanic therapist.
Let's go back to language, because we're in this time, in this generation where there is a group of Latinos in the Great Lakes Bay region who don't speak Spanish, but maybe their parents do, or they have children who they want to teach Spanish. And that specific issue of being, I'm a Latino, I identify that way, but I do not speak the language. Does that ever come across as an issue that goes into identity?
I haven't had any clients personally that have struggled not knowing both languages, but from personal experiences within the Latino community that do not speak Spanish, they do have like a sense of negativity towards themselves because they feel like they have to have that need to be accepted in the Hispanic community. I don't feel as if you speak Spanish or not, you're not a part of our Latino community, but they have kind of a sense of feeling like they weren't given that opportunity. So if it ever came back to that, I would definitely find resources for them to maybe find opportunities to, if they want to expand their Spanish ability, that they can reach those experiences too.
So hitting the topic of tradition, mental health stability wasn't always a buzzword, right? The ways that, well, I guess I should ask you, what were ways that the population coped when they had a mental instability?
Like I went back earlier talking about our family, specifically my family, but I know a lot of Hispanic families, they automatically assume that go to spirituality as a form of coping, you know, which is fine. Spirituality is definitely a great way of coping. However, it is totally okay to seek an agency that can give you that one-on-one experience that is going to allow you to, you know, let down those layers of vulnerability to express other than the religious aspect of it. When I started going to therapy, my mom was not for it. My mom's from Michoacan, Mexico, so she's like very traditional Hispanic. And when I told her, and I was very proud of my accomplishments, I shared it on Facebook. Mom was very embarrassed that I shared it on Facebook because it is stigmatized. She didn't even want me to take medication if they were prescribing those antidepressants because it's just looked so negatively upon it, like brujeria in a way, you know? So the fact of the matter is, religion is always the first thing, or going to family members and sharing those experiences, but sometimes you don't want to share those experiences with family members because then there's chisme everywhere and everybody's going to know your business, and sometimes you don't want to share those experiences, especially if it's something you're struggling with, and you know the Latino community is very proud. We're very proud people, so why would we want to share some vulnerable experiences that might make us look weak instead of, you know, instead of looking for some professional help?
So do you ever see a complete turnaround in a family? You know, let's talk about that good now, because there's definitely the negatives that happen when you're trying to bottle these things up, in, you know, finding outside sources like religion, or, you know, even toxic behaviors to bottle this up.
So I haven't worked with anybody that has fully met that full circle, but I think that with progress in therapy, that it's not a measure of going to that full circle, it's just to make progress. So I have had kids that, especially young men, who are now second thinking about how they talk to their mother, because their father or their male figure in their life used to talk to women anyway. I've had young men who are realizing, like, school is important, I want to get a good job, I'm going to allow, I want to have kids and I want to be an active part in their lives. I've worked also with some young ladies that are like, I can succeed, I can go to college, I can provide for my family, and I don't need a man to dictate that.
What are conversations that maybe we can have at home to notice instability early on?
Yeah, so a couple things come to mind when you ask that question. So when we begin to notice changes in our moods or changes in our activities and things like that, this could be a sign that something is going on. And so if you're noticing that you or your loved one, they're staying in the room more, they're not coming out, not being as social. If they're having challenges at work or at school, we always talk about how is your challenges impacting your functioning. those are like some of those signs that we might be able to see ahead of time. And then when we do see those signs, it might be a good time to, to pick up the phone, and, give a professional a call.
When we're looking at a family member, or even ourselves, and thinking, this is a phone call I need to make, what does that time look like, from the timeline from them coming into the office to them actually seeing a change, and how does that person work at that internally?
Yeah, so it's different for everybody. So some people come in, and I've had a person come in and they had 1 or 2 sessions and they were good after that. I've had some people come in and they've been in with me for services for 5 years. So it varies from person to person. We are always talking about, we're hoping that individuals and families have family members and friends and things that they can, talk to as well. We hope not to be the only person in their lives, although there's moments where we are the only person in their lives who can kind of help them, look through their challenges. But it's really going to depend on that resiliency factor. We all have a certain level of resiliency, but again, that resiliency factor, it increases the more support that we have around us, the more conversations that we have, the more that we beat down some of these stigmas and stuff, and we're willing to open up and have these conversations and stuff like that.
How long have you been in practice?
So I have officially been a limited license master social worker for like a year and a half. However, I interned at McDowell Healing Arts Center, and I was also an intern at another facility with my master's.
So since that time, have you seen a change to the stigma from the inside perspective?
I would say I do. I did. There's been a lot of families that would avoid the talk of mental health. I give my personal experience in that, like when I first started, my dad thought I was going to go become a brujo for gringos. And
Define that.
so brujo for gringos is like a witch doctor for white people. And then as I was learning and I was involving in my education, I was able to teach my dad about generational trauma and how we can go about changing that and how he's changing it. And now we just had this conversation last week, and he's like, I'm so proud of you. Look at how successful you're being. Look at how you're being able to provide for your family.
How did that make you feel?
Made me feel great, especially if, like in the past, I always questioned myself. So.
In this position, have you ever had a moment where you, like you spoke about your mother, have you ever had a moment of just, is this where I need to be?
Imposter syndrome is a real thing. Okay, I think any social worker, anybody in this field is going to feel like they can do more, or there might not be the days that they're like, ooh, I did not do therapy well today with my clients. My mom is very proud of me as well. It took her some convincing, she didn't think my skin was thick enough for this type of career, but I've proven myself. There are days that I'll be in Melvin's office crying in many occasions, but then there's other days that I can go home like, wow, I did my thing today. A client will tell me like they appreciate what I've done, and they appreciate that they feel safe and heard in their environment, and you can see how much they've grown. I've been seeing clients for 3 or 4 years now on my caseload, and they will take breaks and come back. So if they come back, that must show that I'm doing something, the agency itself's doing something, because we have a lot of regular clients that take their steps because they have accomplished certain criteria that they wanted to when they were struggling, but then they're like, okay, now I have a setback again, and they reach McDowell Healing Arts Center again. So I feel like that just shows that our agency is doing what needs to be done in the area.
What are some things that the community can do as a whole to break this, these generational barriers that maybe we can pass on?
So, like stated earlier, Kaylina, they're a group here in Saginaw area that they've reached out whenever they have community events. So usually whenever there's a Hispanic event, he reaches out to Angel and I, and we set up a table sharing our resources and information for McDowell.
So I'm the youth group director at my church, and one thing about our priest there is he allows me to bring in the mental health aspect, and being able to tailor it with the religious aspect, as well as like we all go through our struggles. So how do we come together and correct our, give each other strength?
Being open and honest about the struggles that we all endure, I think, is a huge thing in, you know, in any community. There's so many people who are scared or embarrassed to talk about different things that they're going through. But I think the more that the community, you know, talk about mental health and talk about, you know, our challenges. And I'm not saying stand on a rooftop and say, hey, I have mental health challenges, but I am saying, you know, it's important for, you know, for folks to know, you know, I tell my clients, like, I have a therapist. I'm a therapist, but I have a therapist. And I'm not embarrassed about that.
Like
you know?
a barber needs a barber.
Absolutely. A physician needs a physician. Absolutely. And so, you know, I think the more that we can talk about it, the more that we have conversation about it, the more that we normalize that we are all susceptible to the human condition. We're human. And so we're going to, you know, be happy one day, sad another day. You know, things are going to happen. You know, life transitions are going to happen, and it's going to impact our functioning. You know, and so I think as long as we continue to have those types of conversations, being honest and upfront about those things, and being willing to share those things. And again, I'm not saying share it with the masses, but at least at a minimum in your home, you know, start in your home and, you know, admit to, like, hey, this is something that I'm experiencing. And hopefully we've created safe spaces for people also, though. So that's the other part of it, is creating safe spaces for people, because I'm not going to open up to you if I don't feel safe, you know, so that's another thing too.
So for those watching who can't or don't feel safe coming to a facility, what are some things that they can do at home?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And like I started off earlier, I mentioned almost anything can be therapeutic. And so let's say you decide not to go see a professional. Okay. What are some things that you might be able to do that you enjoy? That, you know, are you getting out of the house? Are you getting some sun? Me personally, when I'm feeling down, I might listen to some music. I might listen to some old jams, or, you know, maybe something current even, but listening to some music, you know, talking to a friend, talking to a trusted individual. If you don't trust us as professionals, okay, I get it, but you might have someone in your life that you trust, that's gonna at least hold space for you, at a minimum, hold space for you, so that you can process, you know, what's going on. So those are just some of the things that come to mind for me with that question.
And one thing I would like to add with that part too is let yourself feel the emotions.
Yeah.
If you're sad, don't bottle it up. Let yourself feel that emotion. You can go to your room and cry. It feels good after crying. You can, if you're angry, going out and doing something to release that energy. Every emotion has energy. It's just how we express it.
Do you have any suggestions for us on ways to express our emotions, and, you know, do some kind of self-healing if we have a viewer who's unable to come to professional services like this?
Well, even if they don't want to go to the facility, we do have options to do a video or a phone call too. So even picking up the phone and having a phone call with a professional there at our agency can be therapeutic. I have a handful of individuals that, you know, they don't want to come in face to face, or they don't want to do video chat because it makes them anxious seeing somebody in that, you know, in our agency. So having a phone call and still being able to hear somebody and having the unbiased opinion is very helpful.
So when we're talking about the Latino population specific, and then bringing it right down to this region, this is really a step forward in the direction of healing a whole population, a whole generation of people. What specific services do you provide for this population, and how can they find you?
So one of the things that I do is I work with families. So there's a lot of parent education that goes involved in that. You know, growing up Mexican American, I was spanked. There's a lot of research that says that spanking doesn't work. So then I'm allowed to help the parents negotiate, well, how do I parent without spanking? And even the kids then, how do I communicate what's really going on with me when I don't have the words, is a huge thing. Other things that I have that I've worked with people is being able to go out and find out what makes them happy. with us Latinos, we're always working hard, and some of us enjoy work, but how do we relax and be able to calm down from that?
And then how could we find resources just in the community in general to help this population grow?
There are a lot of resources in the community, and some of them aren't known about. Our local Saginaw County Community Mental Health, on their website, you can go to their website, sccmha.org, and they have a lot of community resources on there. There are other community resource guides and things. I believe the public health, our Saginaw County Public Health, they have resource guides as well. We're always posting things on our Facebook page. If things are coming up, we post things. And again, obviously people can find us. They can find us on Facebook. They can find us in general. We're 3253 Congress, McDowell Healing Arts Center.
And viewers in general are welcome to follow along with this episode, and we can share outside resources all over the region to help the mental health and stability in the Latino population here in the Great Lakes Bay region. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you sharing your personal experiences along with your professional input, and I hope that we heal as a community and grow to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to the professional advice from local therapists of the Great Lakes Bay region, we were able to get some questions answered and ideas on how to seek assistance when mental health needs to take a priority. For further information and for past episodes, visit the website on your screen.
Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And make sure to click that bell icon to stay notified when we upload new content. Videos like this are only possible because of viewers like you. To help support this channel, click on the link in the description below. We'll see you next time.